Alright, this is how to replace the interior door handle on the 2000 to 2004 Toyota Avalon. You can see this one is just completely gone. So we are going to replace that. As you can see, this one not only has the chrome peeling, but it just completely snapped out. And this piece might actually be good, minus the chrome, but this housing piece is completely snapped, and it seems to be a thing that happens on some of these older cars. So let's get to work. All right, to start, there are going to be a total of 6 screws to remove. There's one behind this cover, which I already pulled out. This cover, there are 3 along the bottom on the left, middle, and right. So we do right here, right there, and right there. And then as we come up, there's also a cover inside the housing here that is an absolute pain to remove, but it can be done. And then also there are going to be 2 plastic clips that also need to be removed, and we will go from there once I have them out. All right, these are all 3 of the tools that I'm actually using for this. There's a very thin flathead screwdriver that has been super useful, both for popping open the cover on the housing here, and also just for removing those little dots that were over the screws. This is great. This should probably be a little bit stubbier. If you have a bit of a stubbier Phillips head, then usually that will do the trick. It does need to be fairly wide, but a little bit stubbier. And then this one's just going to be in case the electrical connectors are a particularly large pain. Yeah, so far I've removed the broken bits, and I have all of these screws and clips there. Just in case anyone was unaware, these clips are removed by pushing in the center with something small, usually pointy, and then they should just pull right out if you can get a little fingernail or flathead underneath the lip here. So it's a pretty slick design, actually. It came out really nicely, even though this car is not new. So yeah, once the screw that was retaining this entire housing in place was removed, this thing just fell right out. There was no other method of retention. And then this thing is already loose, though it's kind of held in there by the door card. So once we get the door card off, then we're gonna eventually get to what we need to be replacing. So the next step is to remove this thing, and this is very easy to remove. All you have to do is you pull up, and then you pull backwards, and the whole thing lifts out. Now there's an electrical connector holding it in, and it is right here. It is rather large, but once you remove that, then you're pretty much good to go. All right, so I got the electrical connector off. There is the best way to remove it is when the panel is in here, is to rotate it down so you have good access to the connector. Mine actually ended up flipped this way, and that made life a little bit easier. On the connector here, there is a larger tab piece, and then there's the actual lock. This locks into the other side of the connector. This is the best spot to push down on, and just give it a good wiggle, because it is likely pretty tight in there. And then this screw is what we're going to need to remove next, and we'll be one step closer to getting that door card off. Alright, and then the last bit you're going to want to remove is this thingy. It's pretty much just sitting in there. If you can pull the top of the door card away from the window, and then use a little flathead or pry something or other to get in the top of it up here, it should just pop right out, and it did for me. And this is going to be an important step to put this back on before the door card goes back on, or else it ain't going back on. Alright, so my door card's actually already off because I just pulled it out to make sure everything's going correctly. Indeed it was. All you got to do is really just grab where that handle was there and kind of pull up and hold onto the door card. And don't drop it yet, because there's a second connector. It is this connector right here, and it plugs in to this little foam wrapped thing. Yours might not be wrapped in foam, but this is what it is. It's plugged into this little thing. There's a tiny little tab right there, and that's all it takes to get it off. While you're at it, you can check other things. Like, I wasn't sure if this speaker was okay. It seems like it is, so that's good news. Make sure nothing else is pulled out or is broken. Again, this thing is just completely shattered. Yeah, I found pieces of it pretty much all over the inside of that door card again, so it was prime time to replace it. So let's do just that. Now, when you buy a new door handle, it might look like this, and it might also come with the housing still attached. If the housing is still attached, you do need to take the housing off. And then you should really just be able to slide this on in once we get our cables connected on up. Alrighty, so this was very, very easy to install. Again, it was really just the 3 clips, but you need to get these cables on. Each of the cables has a little 90-degree bend right at the end on a little pin. Slide the pin into its respective position. Top one is the lock, bottom is the door handle, and then each of the housings here just slide right in. They don't unscrew, they slide straight into the housing here. You can see this one has the open slot. The bottom one actually completely snapped off. And yeah, no, it fits on pretty fantastically. Just the 3 tabs slide right in and it locks. All right, the next thing that one should do when putting this all back together is to make sure that the door locks properly and whatnot. Just plug this back into this and press that lock and unlock button. In my case, my lock motor is actually dead, so that wasn't particularly useful, but it does still manually lock and unlock, and that's also kind of what we're looking for. The door does in fact lock when it's closed, so that is very nice. Yeah, and then we're going to do our steps nearly in reverse order. We're going to try this top piece right here. It should just clip right on in, but I probably shouldn't do it with just one hand. Alright, so we did have a bit of a mishap with this. The top section of it snapped right off, because that's what you get for trying to use old plastic. So I'll replace that eventually, so free of that little bolt mess there, but the door card goes on very nicely. All you have to do is like really go up and over the top. There's kind of a lip at the top of the door card that needs to sit against the door frame, and you'll know it's sitting right if this weather stripping is right up against the window. Alright, so this is even sitting here pretty nicely with really just like that clip that's down there in. These haven't been screwed in, none of this has been screwed in, but it's definitely sitting on there pretty good. So we will put in this screw here and then clip the whole panel assembly in place, and then we will get this screw, the screws at the bottom and the tabs at the side in, and then we'll get this on here and then screw that in, and we'll pretty much be done. One thing to note before we go any further is that this electrical connector you want to be on the left side of the support beam. It will not plug in correctly if it's on the right side. That is just one thing to keep in mind. And yeah, we'll just keep going and getting everything else in. Alright, so we got all the screws in, at least on this trim where it's the gray interior. This cap and this cap are actually different colors. I did get them mixed around the first time, and that was a pretty funny error. With these, in case you've never used them, when you push them in, because it releases a small plastic spring, you have to push it back before inserting, or else they will not clip in properly. And then you just kind of push the tab back, it's flush, and it works great. So this is going to be fairly simplistic. The idea is that you're going to want to pull the door handle partially out, slide it through the hole in the cover here, and just kind of slot it on and push it in. Alright, I'm going to use the broken one as an example here. There's a big tab sticking up out of the front area of the handle. It is critical that that tab goes in first. So you kind of angle it in this way and then slide it in and lock it in place, because otherwise it will guaranteed not work correctly. I had to take the entire door panel off again just to get to it. It's a bit of a hassle. I mean, it only took a few minutes, but not fun, so don't do that. I have every other screw back on, no screws left over, got all the broken bits. These are almost entirely just broken bits. Yep, that one's going to go back on as well, right once it goes into that hole. So then that would be the final steps. We'll close up the flap. Again, unfortunately, this is broken, but yeah, otherwise it's a success.